Why is the world suddenly so afraid of India's rising power that they're scrambling to either partner up or push back? In just the past few months, India has been at the center of an absolute storm of global drama. From Donald Trump randomly threatening tariffs on Indian rice at a casual meeting, to Dr. S. Jaishankar delivering brutal truth bombs about Western hypocrisy on immigration, from Prime Minister Modi breaking a 40-year diplomatic silence with Jordan, to Russia and India signing deals worth billions while the West watches nervously. From Mexico suddenly panicking about Indian exports, to Ethiopia welcoming an Indian leader to address their parliament for the first time in history. Something massive is shifting in the world order, and India is right at the center of it all. This isn't just diplomacy. This is India refusing to play by the old rules anymore. This is a nation that's been quiet for too long, now speaking with the voice it always deserved. Let's break down everything that's been happening, because once the pieces come together, the picture becomes crystal clear. Sometimes in politics, someone says what everyone knows, but nobody dares to speak out loud. Dr. S. Jaishankar, India's External Affairs Minister, did exactly that. At a recent meeting, when people asked about immigration restrictions, he didn't give soft answers. He dropped a truth bomb. His message was simple and powerful. Countries that want economic growth but block the talented people who create that growth will lose. Not maybe, they will lose. Think about what he's saying. In today's world of AI, advanced technology, and modern manufacturing, talented people are everything. And talented people don't wait around at closed borders. If one country shuts them out, they'll simply go somewhere else. The work won't stop. It'll just happen in another country that's smart enough to welcome them. The timing makes his words hit even harder. Right now, the Trump administration is making H-1B visas much harder to get. They're checking resumes, looking through social media, and searching LinkedIn profiles. This matters a lot to India because Indians get 71% of all approved H-1B visas. That's not just a number. That's proof of Indian excellence. These are the engineers who wrote the code that runs the world, the scientists who push boundaries, the innovators who didn't just work in Silicon Valley, they built it from the ground up. But Jaishankar went even further. He cut through all the political noise and named the real problem. Western countries don't have a jobs problem because of immigrants. They have a jobs problem because they moved their factories to China. Immigrants didn't take away jobs. American companies moving factories overseas did. And then he said what Western politicians won't admit. The West cannot survive without immigrants. The proof is clear. When immigration goes up by just 1%, economic output grows by almost 1% within 5 years. In America alone, immigration will add nearly $9 trillion to the economy in the next 10 years. $9 trillion. That's not help or charity. That's massive wealth creation. Immigrants create more than 25% of U.S. patents. Immigrants are 80% more likely to start companies. The CEOs running Google, Microsoft, and many other tech giants? Immigrants. The healthcare workers in hospitals? Immigrants. The farm workers growing food? Immigrants. Without them, Western economies don't just slow down, they fall apart. Europe and America have aging populations. Their pension systems, their healthcare, their whole society depends on younger workers. Immigrants provide exactly that. They work, they pay taxes, they keep everything running. Without them, the whole system breaks down. So why are they restricting immigrants? Jaishankar's answer is simple: politics. It's easier to blame an engineer from Hyderabad than to admit that a big corporation moved its factory to China for cheaper labor. It's easier to blame outsiders than to face decades of bad decisions. Even Trump knows this is contradictory. His administration restricts visas, but he also says America needs foreign talent. The contradiction is obvious, but Jaishankar isn't saying borders should be completely open. He's clear about the problems with illegal immigration, trafficking, and exploitation. His vision isn't open borders. It's smart borders. Borders that recognize the truth. Talented people will move, technology will move, and countries that build walls instead of bridges will be left behind. The future doesn't wait. It goes where it's welcome. Meanwhile, in Washington, Donald Trump is making trade policy in the strangest way. Picture this. He's at a meeting about American farming, A rice mill owner from Louisiana complains that some countries are dumping rice in America. Dumping here means selling it cheap to win customers. She names India, Thailand, and China. Trump's response? He immediately threatens tariffs. The Treasury Secretary literally writes down country names on paper like a grocery list. This is how America's biggest economy now makes trade policy. Someone complains at a meeting, and minutes later, it becomes an international threat. Let's look at the real facts. India is the world's biggest rice producer and biggest rice exporter. India produces around 150 million tons of rice every year and exports about 23 million tons to 172 countries. India isn't a small player. India is essential to feeding the world. The United States imports about 1.3 million tons of rice, and 26% comes from India. Think about that. America depends on India for more than a quarter of its rice. On the other hand, America represents only 3% of India's rice exports, about $400 million. The math is simple. What's easier to replace? India's 3%, which can be sold to dozens of other countries or even used at home, or America's 26%, which means American buyers will face higher prices and less rice? India has the stronger position, but Trump won't admit it because he's trapped by his own mistakes. He put tariffs on China. So China stopped buying American farm products and started buying from Argentina and Brazil instead. Those same tariffs made American farming more expensive. Tractors, fertilizers, everything costs more now. Then Trump's immigration crackdown removed the cheap farm labor that farmers needed. The result? American farmers will lose up to $43 billion this season. $43 billion. These are the people who voted for Trump, who supported him, now destroyed by his own policies. His solution? Give farmers $12 billion in aid. Think about how crazy this is. Put tariffs on imports. Those tariffs destroy farmers. Then use money from those tariffs to help farmers. It's not a policy, it's a disaster going in circles. But the damage doesn't stop at farms. Regular American people are suffering too. About 40% say their finances are in bad shape. U.S. inflation hit 3% in October for the first time since January. So Trump goes on to tell people prices are coming down. Except they're not. His big bet on tariffs has completely backfired, and India keeps getting dragged into his mess. First H-1B visas, then Russian oil, now rice. Every time it seems like there might be progress on a trade deal, Trump adds something new to the list, making everything more complicated. A U.S. trade team is expected to visit New Delhi soon, but with Trump's unpredictable behavior, one big question remains. Will this actually lead to progress, or is it just more drama? Just when everyone thought the trade chaos was under control, Mexico jumped in. The country announced it's raising tariffs on Asian imports, including Indian products, up to 50% on goods from countries that don't have trade agreements with them. These tariffs start in April 2026. India's embassy in Mexico raised concerns back in September when the bill was first introduced. Now everyone can see the real damage. India exports $5.3 billion worth of goods to Mexico every year. Cars alone are worth nearly $1 billion. Compact cars from Volkswagen, Hyundai, Nissan, and Maruti Suzuki made in Indian factories for Mexican customers. With the new tariffs, import taxes on cars will jump from 20% to 50%. That's not a small change. That's a complete game changer. Every car company will have to rethink everything. But it's not just cars. The tariffs affect nearly 1,500 types of products. Plastics, textiles, steel, machinery, electronics, all facing tax increases of up to 35%. Indian products that were competitive before are now too expensive. Why is Mexico doing this? They're copying Trump's strategy, protecting local factories and jobs. But there's more to it. The U.S. is Mexico's biggest economic partner, and America is pushing Mexico to reduce China's role in North American business. The tariff plan could also bring in $3.7 billion in tax money from Mexico, helping fix their budget problems. It's a huge change for a country that was built on free trade. For India, the lesson is clear. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. No country can depend on just a few export markets. India needs strong domestic supply chains. Manufacturing power needs to grow. Strategic reserves need to be built. India has already started this work. The push for Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, wasn't just about pride. It was smart planning. It recognized that global trade is becoming a weapon and countries need protection. While the West was busy building walls, India's prime minister was building bridges. Modi stepped off the plane in Jordan, and history was watching closely. Why? Because the last time an Indian prime minister visited Jordan was 40 years ago. 4 decades of silence. Broken. This wasn't just a casual trip. This was India reclaiming its seat at a table it should never have left. And the timing couldn't be more important. Jordan matters because it's a key player in the Israel-Palestine peace process. Jordan stands firmly against radicalization and extremism. India wants closer ties with partners who share these values. The talks covered everything, from the recent terror attack in Australia to the Gaza conflict to terrorism spreading across the world. But here's where it gets really smart. This visit wasn't just about security, it was about survival. India's survival. India imports huge amounts of fertilizers from Jordan. Phosphoric acid, which Indian farmers desperately need to grow food. There's a joint business worth $860 million that supplies a massive chunk of what India needs to feed its people. Food prices are rising everywhere. Supply chains are breaking, and India is making absolutely sure that its farmers won't suffer because of unstable global markets. That's smart planning. That's protecting your people while everyone else is just talking about it. Defense cooperation was also discussed. India and Jordan signed a defense deal back in 2018. Now they're looking at ways to make it even stronger. Because in today's world, security partnerships aren't optional. They're essential for survival. The visit also marked 75 years of friendship between the two nations, 3/4 of a century, and Modi's presence sent a clear message. India values its old friends and is ready to build even stronger bonds for the future. After Jordan, Modi headed to Ethiopia, and this stop meant something even deeper. Why? Because Ethiopia represents more than just one country. It represents the global South, the nations that have been overlooked, underestimated, and exploited for far too long. Modi spoke to a joint session of Ethiopia's parliament, the first Indian leader ever to do so. Think about the power of that moment. An Indian prime minister standing before Ethiopian lawmakers, speaking not as a visitor, but as a partner, as an equal, as someone who knows what it means to fight for your place in the world. India's connection with Ethiopia runs deep. There are over 650 Indian companies invested in Ethiopia, putting more than $5 billion into agriculture, engineering, textiles, and manufacturing. Indian businesses didn't just show up to make money. They showed up to build something lasting. Trade between India and Ethiopia crossed $570 million in 2023 to 2024. India is Ethiopia's second largest trading partner. Indian machinery, medicines, manufactured goods, and farm equipment keep Ethiopian industries running. But it's not just about business, it's about development. Ethiopia has received over $1 billion in low-interest loans from India for projects in rural electricity, railways, and the sugar industry. India isn't giving loans with impossible conditions like some other powers do. India is building real capacity, training people, empowering communities to stand on their own feet. Thousands of Ethiopian students and professionals have been trained through Indian scholarship programs. 150 Indian teachers are currently teaching in Ethiopian universities. That legacy goes back to the late 1800s when Indian teachers, especially from Gujarat, became the backbone of Ethiopia's school system, even in the most remote villages. This is what real partnership looks like. Not exploitation, not control, partnership between equals. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Modi already know each other well. They met at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg in 2023, where India strongly pushed for Ethiopia's entry into BRICS. That support wasn't random. It was a statement. India believes in lifting others up, not keeping them down. Now Ethiopia is going through massive economic changes, opening up banking, capital markets, and key industries. And India wants to align its help with Ethiopia's actual priorities. There's huge potential in textiles, medicines, IT, mining, and infrastructure. The opportunities are enormous. Modi's visit wasn't just about two countries getting closer. It was about showing the world that India stands with the global south, that India remembers where it came from, and that India's rise will lift others up, not leave them behind. While Western powers talk about aid and charity, India does something different. India builds partnerships, India creates jobs, India transfers knowledge. India treats other developing nations as equals, not as charity cases. Modi's final stop was Oman. The visit marked 70 years of friendship between the two nations. Modi met with the Sultan and spoke to the Indian community in Muscat. The Indian community in Oman is massive. They've played a huge role in building economic and cultural bridges between the two countries. For them, seeing their prime minister visit is more than pride. It's recognition. It's being seen and valued by their homeland. Modi has called West Asia a home away from home for millions of Indians. And he's absolutely right. There are millions of Indians living and working across the region. This tour was about protecting that community, strengthening those ties, and building long-term influence in a region that matters deeply to India. The Gulf states are India's maritime neighbors. The Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea connect them. Shared sea lanes mean shared risks and shared responsibilities. India isn't a silent observer anymore. It wants to play a real role in shaping what happens in the region. While the West tried to isolate Russia, India sat down with President Putin and got to work. The message was clear. India doesn't take orders. India makes its own decisions based on its own interests. The talks focused on one big goal: reach $100 billion in annual trade by 2030. Right now, trade sits at $65 billion. That's a massive jump, but both countries believe they can do it. Russia made a powerful guarantee: oil, gas, and coal shipments to India will never stop. In a world where energy is being used as a weapon, that promise means everything. India's lights will stay on. India's factories will keep running. India's farmers will get fuel for their tractors. Russia is also building India's nuclear future. The Kudankulam nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu is India's largest, built with Russian technology. 2 reactors are already working. 4 more are being built. Putin even talked about advanced nuclear tech like modular reactors and floating nuclear power plants. This is the future of India's energy independence. But here's the brilliant part. India pushed for balance. For too long, India bought from Russia but sold very little back. That's changing now. Russia agreed to buy more marine products and farm goods from India. Remember those products? They're the exact same ones hit by Trump's 50% tariffs back in August. Indian exporters were suffering. Now Russia is offering an alternative market. When one door closes, India opens another. Defense cooperation is evolving too. India used to just buy Russian weapons. Now they're building together technology transfers, joint manufacturing, making defense parts inside India. The relationship is moving from buyer-seller to true partners. India and Russia also signed a worker mobility deal. Around 70,000 Indian professionals can now work in Russia in construction, engineering, textiles, manufacturing, and electronics. Meanwhile, Russian tourists get a 30-day free e-visa to India. 2 new Indian consulates opened in Russia to strengthen ties even more. Both nations took a united stand against terrorism, condemning attacks in Jammu, in Kashmir, and Moscow. They committed to fighting terrorism in all its forms: cross-border terror, terror financing, and terror safe havens. The war in Ukraine wasn't in the joint statement, but Modi spoke about it privately. His message has been consistent. Dialogue and diplomacy are the only paths to peace. But buried in the summit was something even more powerful, something that will shape India's future for the next 100 years. India and Russia signed shipping agreements that most people ignored. Big mistake. These agreements are about turning India into a maritime superpower. India is pushing 2 massive blueprints: Maritime India Vision 2030 and Amrit Kaal Vision 2047. The goal? Transform India into a maritime giant by the time the economy hits $30 trillion. The investment needed? Up to 80 lakh crore rupees. Ports, ships, logistics, sea routes that bypass global choke points. The agreements focus on three critical corridors: the International North-South Transport Corridor, or INSTC, the Chennai-Vladivostok Eastern Maritime Corridor, and the Northern Sea Route through the Arctic. The INSTC is a game-changer. It connects India and Russia through Iran using sea, rail, and road. Cargo that takes 40 days via the Suez Canal will now reach Mumbai from St. Petersburg in just 25 days. Costs drop by 30%. Transit time cut by 40%. The strategy is brilliant. With constant problems around the Suez, conflicts, blockades, political chaos, India is diversifying its trade routes. The INSTC also connects directly to Iran's Chabahar port, where India already has a strong presence. Then there's shipbuilding. For too long, India relied on foreign-built ships. That's changing. Shipbuilding partnerships mean industrial independence, more jobs, higher skills, stronger regional connections. Russia will also train Indian seafarers to operate in polar waters. Indian seafarers already make up 14% of the global maritime workforce. This agreement raises their skills and prepares them for Arctic opportunities. As new Arctic routes open, demand for trained polar sailors will explode. India wants to be ready. This summit wasn't about the past. It was about the next century at sea. While the West imposed sanctions and pressured India to cut ties with Russia, India looked them in the eye and chose its own path. That's the difference between a confident nation and one that takes orders. India doesn't follow. India leads. And the world is learning that lesson, one partnership at a time. So let's bring it all together. In the past few months, India has been in the middle of an absolute whirlwind. Tariff threats from Trump, diplomatic breakthroughs in Jordan, historic moments in Ethiopia, strategic partnerships with Russia, trade shocks from Mexico, and Jaishankar dropping truth bombs about immigration that the West didn't want to hear. On the surface, it looks like chaos. But step back and the pattern becomes clear. India is refusing to be sidelined anymore. For too long, India played by rules written by others, waited for permission, stayed quiet when it should have spoken, watched from the margins when it deserved a seat at the center. Not anymore. Look at the bigger picture. Every single move India is making right now is about one thing: sovereignty, energy sovereignty, food sovereignty, defense sovereignty, economic sovereignty. The sovereignty to make decisions based on India's interests, not someone else's convenience. There will be pushback. There already is. Trump will keep threatening tariffs. Other countries will try to limit India's rise. Critics will question every partnership. But here's the thing about rising powers. They don't ask for permission. They earn their place through strength, strategy, and the refusal to back down. India is home to 1.4 billion people, a civilization thousands of years old, an economy on the path to becoming the third largest in the world, a military that defends one of the most complex borders on the planet, a diaspora that has excelled in every corner of the globe. This isn't the beginning of India's rise. India was always destined for this. What's happening now is India reclaiming what was always rightfully its own. The world is watching, some with admiration, some with envy, some with fear, but everyone is watching, because deep down they all know the same truth. The 21st century won't be shaped by those who cling to old power. It will be shaped by those who have the courage to build new paths. And India isn't just walking that path. India is paving it. So here's the final question. When the history of this era is written, will the world remember the countries that tried to hold India back? Or will they remember the moment India decided nothing could stop it anymore?